Hi, welcome to Field Eye. I'm Craig Heidemann, founder of Field Eye, an archery sight pin marking system that allows you to mark your individual sight pins with the maximum distance your pins are set to shoot. I'm an avid archery hunter and have always wanted a way to mark my pins with the maximum distance I plan to shoot. All archery shooters have a lot to think about when shooting archery equipment, so why not remove one variable by marking the actual distance on the pin? I think you will find that using Field Eye will make you a better shooter and more successful in the field. Now let me show you what comes in each Field Eye package and how to install them. Each Field Eye package comes with 24 sight pin markers. There are two sizes depending on the size of your sight pins. The 3mm size fits most round or thin flat pins, and the 6mm fits most large flat pins. Use the size that fits the tightest before shrinking. Also included are 12 grommets that can be used with the larger 6mm markers. Slice one side of the grommet with scissors and place it on the face of the sight pin. The sight pin marker is then slid over the sight pin and the grommet to create a greater surface area for viewing the number on the sight pin marker. I will now show you the installation of a 3mm marker and a 6mm marker with grommet. Okay, this is the installation of the 3mm sight marker. In this particular case, we have a sight and we're putting in our 35-yard marker. And you can see that the pin is a smaller pin, so we're going to not have to use a grommet. We're just going to use the 35 pin marker. And I slide it on, and I notice that the marker is a little bit long for that pin. So it's pretty easy. We just pull it off after we've noticed that. It's just caught a little bit there on the pin. You can slide it right off, as you can see, before you actually shrink it around there. And I'll take a pair of scissors and I can cut and make it a little bit smaller on either end. Try to keep it even so the number actually centers. And then once I'm done with that, I can go back and actually make sure the 35 is lined up straight. And it should be centered on the pin. Sometimes you have to play with it just a little bit, because when it shrinks, it's going to shrink around. And so you just want to make sure that it's as close to the center of the pin as possible. It usually floats pretty close to the center. Once you get the pin on there, you just want to move it a little bit like this. And then you're going to need a heat gun or a hair dryer. Heat guns work better because you can get to a little bit more heat. You don't want to do too much heat because you don't want to ruin the pin or the fiber optics in the pin. But essentially 550 is what I find that's a good temperature, but you can do less. So now I'll turn the heat gun on, and I'm going to select 550. You don't need to hold it on there very long. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to hit it from the front, just about that long, and that gives me a little shrink. But then I want to pick it up and hit it once from the back, just to give equal heat distribution across the marker. And again, you don't have to do it very long, you just do it quickly like that. And now you can see, once I power off the heat gun here, that it's actually, the marker is in place and it's centered, and you can actually see the 35 on the center of the pin. And you will be able to see that as you glance down to your sight when you pull up your bow to shoot, and typically at full draw you can see it through your sight pin as well, your peep sight as well. Now I'm going to show you the installation of the 6mm sight marker with grommet. So I already know that the sight pin is a little bit wider and will require the use of the 6mm marker. So I've fitted over, and I've noticed that I want to use a grommet on this one because I think I can and get a little more surface area to see the number better. So I pick a grommet, and the particular grommets are round, and you just take a pair of scissors and you cut the grommet like that. You just cut through it, so only one side of the grommet is cut. Then you try to hold it open. The easiest way that I do it is I hold it open like this, and I take the sight, I put it over the face of the sight pin, and then you just make sure you can then slide it around a little bit and make sure it's kind of centered on there, because the ideal is that you want to push the sight marker over top of both the sight pin and the grommet. And you want to keep the grommet centered underneath the number on the sight pin marker. so that it doesn't shrink around the outside edges of it. So as I push this on now, I have a 35 that I'm pushing on, and you can see what I'm going to have to do is hold my finger on this one side just to get it started, because sometimes they do fit snugly and it's not a problem. You just have to work it, make sure that it's centered. It's easier to center when you can grab a piece of the side of it like that. And then you just want to push it over and keep it going. And then sometimes I find if you're picking up and handling the sight, it's pretty easy when you're doing it. So I kind of push down on it in the front and try to make sure that the grommet is around it. I'm kind of turning it to try to see. I want to try to make sure that the number is centered on the grommet. So now that it looks like it is centered, then I'm going to take the heat gun and actually heat it again to 550. And I will then go ahead and heat it from the front. Just a little bit again. You don't need to hold it on there for very long. And then I'm going to go ahead and flip it and heat it again from the back, just to make sure that it gets an even shrink all the way around it. But you'll see it shrink around. I'll power off the heat gun. And now you see that you get a real clear 35 with that grommet. It gives it a lot of surface area to see that, very clearly. And again, that was very simple. Took us a couple of minutes to put it on there. And if you actually wanted to take off and put another one on, or put a different yardage, you simply take a razor knife and you just cut along the front part here, and it will cut through. Just be careful not to hurt the sight or sight pin, or cut the fiber optics in the sight. And then that would just peel right off, and you can go ahead and start over again and put a different distance, or get another pack of field eye and actually put the same distance on. So very flexible, easy to use, easy to install. I want to show you some of the sights that we've installed field eye on, and some of the differences in the sights and how the field eye went on, and things that we have to be careful of when we make the installation. So on this particular sight, you can see that the 30 went on very well. We used the 6mm with a grommet, and if you turn it over, you can see that this particular sight, as I stated in my written instructions, has open fiber optics. Those fiber optics come out of the side of the sight, and they actually go through the outside of the sight pin and are attached and are exposed. So we want to be careful when you're putting on the field eye, that when you apply the heat to shrink it, and when you're sliding the field eye over it, basically that you don't disturb that fiber optics. Fiber optics will react to heat. However, we've found in our test that if you just heat it, you don't exceed 550, but you heat it quickly, let it shrink to its maximum shrinkage, and then hit it in the front and the back, that it will be fine and won't hurt the fiber optics. This is a sight pin that we actually installed field eye without a grommet on. We installed the 3mm sight pin marker, and I wanted to show you this particular sight mainly because they have fiber optics at the tip, but you can also see how this sight actually wrapped the fiber optics around the outside of the pin towards the inside. And actually, you have to be very careful when you're heating the field eye around this type of sight pin, because again, you don't want the fiber optics to react negatively to the heat. Again, if you heat it quickly, put the heat on it and take it off, you shouldn't have any problems with it hurting the fiber optics. Again, you can see it wrapped around there. If I flip the sight over, you can see that the fiber optics are wrapped around and they come across the back of the sight. And again, we installed them on here without a problem. And again, if you remove the field eye numbers and replace it with new ones, you want to also be careful that you don't cut into the fiber optics. This is another sight that I want to show you that we installed field eye on. Actually, this one we installed the 6mm with the grommet, and you can see that the sight pin actually has the fiber optics point on the end of the sight pin. We went right over top of that, and there's nothing exposed, no fiber optic exposed on the front side of the pin. And if we flip this side over and we look at the back side, the fiber optics are all inside of the sight pin. So there's actually no exposed fiber optics on the pin itself, which works out really well for field eye because you don't have to be as careful installing it, ensuring that you're not going to overheat the fiber optics. But this one went on very nice. And again, it's another sight that works very well with field eye. Thank you for visiting Field Eye. We appreciate your business and wish you the best of luck.